come now to this video where we're going to explain to a couple, a potential couple who want to get married, what documentation they need to get and why they have to get it and so on. So when a couple make a decision to get married in the church, this does not apply to people who get married in a hotel because the church is not involved there. But if you decide to get married in a church, or let's say you decide to get married in Killeasser or Callow, what you need to do is you need to contact the priest, which is myself or somebody representing me here, and you decide to book the date. Now, we can put down on the diary your date and the time and so on, but officially we can't really book it until you give what we call a letter of freedom. So what the priest will ask you to do is, the priest will ask you to produce a letter with your address at the top and the date, and then you put down your name. I, Mary, have never been married before and am free to marry, and you sign it. And then John, if Mary is marrying John, the address and the date again. I, John, have never been married before and am free to marry, sign it. Those letters are given straight away to the priest. Then he can officially book the wedding. So that's your letter of freedom. Now, what happens after that? Well, then the priest will look for your baptismal cert. He'll look for that. That contains, this book here contains the standard certificates that every parish has. So if you were baptised in Dublin, in some parish, in Swords or whatever it is in Dublin, just contact the priest there or the parish office. They will send on your baptismal cert. And you could have been confirmed somewhere else. You could have been confirmed then in Wicklow. The family might have moved to Wicklow, and you could have been confirmed in Wicklow. But then the parish there will give you a confirmation cert and send it on here to the parish where the wedding is taking place. All documents are given to the parish where the wedding is taking place. So they'd come here if you're getting married here. So the other thing is there's a church letter of freedom as well. But the thing is, some priests are slow to give that until a week or two before the wedding. So some priests will include a letter of freedom. But in my case here, with this system I have, you will already have your letter that you've written yourself to get the wedding booked. But parishes are in the habit now of insisting on this letter that you write yourself. And so those are essential documents that you need to do. The baptismal cert, the confirmation cert, the letter of freedom. Now, the other thing is that the priest more than likely will ask you to do a pre-marriage course, because this is in preparation for the marriage. And the sooner you do it, the better. There's a number of sessions at the pre-marriage course. The couple go together to the pre-marriage course. One of the sessions will be on communication, one of them will be on budgeting, one of them will be on conflict within a marriage and so on. One of them will be on the church's teaching on marriage, and one of them might be about the ceremony and so on. So it's a very useful thing to do a pre-marriage course. And a certificate, that's why I'm holding up now, that's a certificate to say that a particular couple did the pre-marriage course. And a copy of that certificate, or the certificate itself, is always kept with the records and the documents that are sent, just to show that you did that course. What else do you need? Well, in many cases you'll find that there's a church booking form. This is a booking form for Callow Church. It's just the priest may ask a number of questions when you're booking, just about how many people you're going to have. Are you going to have flowers organised? Are you going to have music? Do you need servers to come and serve? If somebody says to me, we'd like servers to serve the wedding mass, then I will get servers here. They're always delighted to serve, to be a part of a wedding. And do you need a Eucharistic minister to give out communion? Especially if you have a big crowd of people who are coming to the wedding, and any special requirements that you need. And so that's the booking form, just to book it. And for people who come from another parish who are not natives, they pay more to get married in Callow. There's a fee, there's an actual fee prescribed. But for the people who are natives of the parish, we don't prescribe a fee, but we often expect a donation to be given to the parish for the use of the church and so on. So that's the booking form for the church. What else? Well, this is a very important form now. It's called the prenuptial inquiry form. So the priest needs to know if your wedding, if your marriage is a special case, if there are some exceptional circumstances involved in your particular wedding. For example, if you're getting married to somebody who's not a Catholic, well then that needs to be included in this form, there's a question about that. So if you're marrying a non-Catholic, these documents are all sent to the bishop when they're put together, and the bishop gives what's called a dispensation, and you're allowed to marry the non-Catholic. And the non-Catholic must say that the children will be brought up as Catholics and baptized as Catholics. That's one of the things that they sign up to or whatever. Another thing is, if you're related to the person you want to marry and you're closely related to them, then you have to say that. You'll be asked that on the form. And again, the documents are sent to the bishop in that case, and the bishop will look for a family tree in some cases to see how closely related you are. And then he may ask a geneticist to help him decide whether the wedding should go ahead. As you know, people who are closely related, if they have children, the children can be deformed, and also they can have mental illness as well. And sometimes the church will not allow a wedding within close degrees of kinship, as it's called. But even if you try to marry somebody who's an adopted person, like if your sister was adopted by your family and you were a genuine child of your father and mother, the church is slow to allow people to marry somebody related to you by adoption. So there's all those kind of things, and the bishop is the expert on that, and he will help with that. But you have to answer all the questions to establish that. Another exceptional circumstance is if one of the parties, either the bride or the groom, or maybe both, are under 18. It's not encouraged at all to get married so young now, although years ago people married a lot younger than that. But if somebody is under 18, they need permission from their parents to get married, but also the bishop has to give permission as well. And sometimes the priest will talk to those people who are very young and maybe say, well, would you think of waiting for a year? But of course it never happens now. In my whole time as a priest, I've never had a request by somebody under 18 to get married, because nowadays people are much older. Actually, they're on the older side now. They might be in their 30s. And rarely would people marry who are not both in their 30s nowadays. But of course it can happen, but it doesn't happen. Not in our culture, not in the Western culture. But obviously there's a lot of non-Irish people living here now from other cultures, and it can happen among those because their culture is different. So this is the prenuptial inquiry form. And also your freedom to marry is requested there as well. Are you free in your own heart, internally? Are you internally free? You know, somebody may not be actually married to somebody, but the thing is, they might not be internally free. They might be under pressure. You know, one party might be putting the other one under pressure to get married. They mightn't really be getting married of their own free will. And so they're asked a question, are you giving your full consent to this? Are you free from all pressure from the other party, from anyone else? And of course the other party cannot be present when that question is asked, because you need to be free to answer it as well. So there's a number, and that establishes all kinds of things. Plus we get all kinds of other bits of information, like the name of your parents, your mother's maiden name, the address of your parents. We also need to know the names of your witnesses. In order to be married validly in the church, you need 2 witnesses, and they have to be over 21, and we have to know who they are and their address and so on, and they're present at the ceremony. So that's all what we call the canonical side. It's all to do with church law, all this. And church law requires that all these documents are found and produced and put together and signed and everything, so that you are then ready to get married. But then there's what's called the civil law, the law of the land. And there is, in every county in Ireland, there's what's called civil registration offices, which register the birth of a child, the death of a person, and the marriage of people. So if you're thinking of getting married, you need to go to the civil registration office in Castlebar, near the hospital, and you phone them up and you go there and you give 3 months notice of your wedding, and you bring your passport and you bring utility bill. I think it's €300 of a fee that you pay, and you also have to have the name and address and the date of birth of your 2 witnesses, and you have to supply that information to them. Then they will send you a form back in a green folder, which has to be filled out on the day that you actually get married, and the name of the priest, the name of the 2 witnesses, the name of the bride and groom goes on that form. It has to be returned to the registration office within 1 month, and then you will be civilly registered. So your status as a citizen now is married. So for the purposes of any of the civil services, any of the government departments, for taxation, for social welfare, no matter what government department you deal with, you will always be recognised as a married person. And that affects your income, it affects your status in all kinds of ways. So to be civilly registered, you have to do that. So those are the documentation that you need. Those are all the different documents that you need to get, and the priest will ask you for those. And as I said, the letter of freedom at the very, very start is essential to so the priest can book the wedding, and then all the other documents too. So I think that's a fairly good summary now of all the documentation that's required, and it is something that I can tell you where to find this video, and you look it up and you listen, and you can play it back as often as you can, so then you'll know what documents to get. And as I say, wherever the wedding is taking place, whatever parish, that's where all those documents have to end up, every single one of them. And they're put in a file and they're kept. We have to hold on to them all the time for as long as possible. And because if there was ever any need for what's called an annulment, all these documents are taken away and looked at. So thanks very much, and I wish you all the very best with your preparation for marriage. Thank you.